Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Off the Bat. Today we're going to be doing another interview. For this episode, the big number 10, in season 2. Well, Geoff, how about letting you introduce yourself?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. My name's Geoff Freeborn. I was fortunate enough to play 5 years of professional baseball. I don't know many other guys. I mean, I actually played baseball on all 6 continents, so I traveled the world and played all over. I guess just haven't played in Antarctica, so might not ever happen. We're got some buddies. We're talking about maybe doing a trip there, but played on the junior national team in 1999, and then played on the Great Britain senior national team for 8 years. And when I was done playing, got into coaching. Coached kind of a bunch of different levels in Calgary. Was the head coach at the University of Calgary for 3 years, and recently just stepped down just to kind of focus more on my sights at our nation and kind of getting more into the scouting side too. Just started last year with the Baltimore Orioles. So, definitely love baseball, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So, identifying as a pitcher, one can only assume that you were a former player in baseball, as you said. So, after looking into it myself, I saw a few things pop up. So, which teams did you exactly play for, and how long?
So I was fortunate. Like I played over in France and Germany, over in Europe. Played in Australia. Played winter ball in Colombia as well. Professionally, like in North America, though, I played for the Calgary Vipers. So that was in the Northern League, which isn't around anymore. I think it's the American Association kind of now. But was able to, it was kind of cool to play professionally in my hometown. That was very cool. Played for the Yuma Scorpions for a little bit with Jose Canseco. That was pretty cool too. So, but yeah, I never got to play affiliated ball. I definitely talked to a lot of teams over the course of my career. I had surgery when I was 17, so that definitely scared away some teams. But so that's where it's cool for me now to be a part of the Orioles. I didn't get to do it as a player, so now I'm doing it more on the back end. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so there's no other sport like baseball. That one fan who yells things from the stands, the awesome employee that lets you to the front before the game to get photos and signatures, or even a game of catch. You clearly love the sport, you played it, you work in it now, and even run a website about it. Could you explain to the listeners what your website is and what you do with it?
yeah, absolutely. So Sidearm Nation, I started kind of 5-6 years ago. During my first season with the Calgary Vipers, basically halfway through the season, it was, my manager was basically called me in the office. I think my area was like around 6 and struggling, kind of a lefty. I didn't, wasn't a power throwing lefty and was struggling in pro ball. So he suggested dropping down, and kind of had some instant success with it, and kind of basically made baseball fun again for me. And so, I mean, when I was done playing, I mean, I kind of took a few years off and actually did long drive golf for a few years and made the Remax Worlds, and just needed like 3 years from just no baseball at all. But I kind of wanted to get back into it. And when I dropped down myself, there was nothing much on the subject. So that's kind of where I just started, creating Sidearm Nation and connecting and interviewing all these former, AAA big league guys. And I initially didn't know where it was going to go with it. And we've done right now, we've done probably at least a dozen camps in the States, and we do one each year in Calgary. And I do some online analysis through it. And so, yeah, I mean, and it's kind of grown. I'm excited now that I have a little more time with UFC. I kind of had my hands tied a little bit, but I've got some cool stuff kind of coming up in the winter with, kind of an ebook and podcast. That's kind of something I want to get into, and possibly an app through the site too. So
That's awesome.
Podcasting is something fun to get into.
yeah, I know,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like I said, I've interviewed a lot of the guys too, and it's just kind of maybe a new way to do it. And I think a lot of guys, I think they would they like that instead of maybe just, the email back or phone interview. I mean, now we can actually kind of, you can see the player himself through the podcast. So
Yeah. So you seem like a really busy person, so thanks for taking the time to come on the show. You're the associate scout for the Orioles, the head baseball coach for University of Calgary, CEO of Sidearm Nation, and a support worker at Calgary Scope Society. So assuming there's some time left, what are some things you like to do during your spare time?
I mean, that's one of the reasons. Like I said, I recently stepped down a few months ago from the University of Calgary. Like I was probably not able to focus on Sidearm Nation, or I thought I could do both, but I definitely was struggling. So I did have to cut that out. I mean, for spare time, I mean, I don't have time to golf as much as I used to. I've gotten kind of into tennis this summer. I used to play tennis competitively growing up, so I've kind of gotten back into that. But honestly, I do like to get in the outdoors. I mean, we're pretty fortunate in Calgary. We're close to the mountains, Banff, Canmore. I like to kind of go out there once in a while just to kind of, not have technology and kind of get a break, I guess. So
Yeah.
pretty fortunate being from Calgary and living close to the mountains too.
So I'm curious. For working for the Orioles, do you work from Canada or the U.S.?
No, it'll be all Calgary based. Kind of right now more just Western Canada. The cool thing though, I'm pretty fortunate with the Orioles. It's kind of definitely one of the things that intrigued me is the Sidearm Nation side, that they're very open and they love the idea and they want to kind of use me to kind of help maybe sign a free agent or sign a pitcher out of indie ball, like that's a sidearm submarine guy. So Baltimore, they've always been open to pitchers. I think 3 years ago they had 4 guys out of the bullpen that were sidearm submarines. So they're definitely an organization that it's not just about velo. They want
Darren
pitchers.
O'Day, he's sidearmed.
Yeah, they had
They're
O'Day,
much more
Donnie
open to it.
Hart, Michael Givens. So there was a period there where they had 4 guys out of the pen. So they're definitely, they want to maybe sign a guy 1 or 2 a year out of indie ball, and definitely a good organization as far as from that standpoint. So Western Canada, I mean, that's where scouting's changed a little bit. It's not necessarily seeing guys as much in person anymore. I guess that's where technology has helped, right? If there's a kid that they can just send me video, and if it's a kid that I like, and I'll send the video over to my boss and he might go see them. So I don't have to necessarily, or scouts don't necessarily have to see a kid in person as much anymore. So I guess that's where video is kind of taken over. But
Yeah. So you started your job with the Orioles in October 2019, which means that your first season scouting from them was a bit different than it would have been. So how would you say this really out of the ordinary season has affected you?
yeah, I mean, obviously, out for a lot of it will be kind of maybe more for next year, especially with a lot of the indie ball. I mean, there's still some indie ball this year, but definitely not as much as there was going to be. But yeah, definitely kind of shut down even our UFC season. We only got our spring games in, and I guess that's where I was going to kind of do some scouting while I was coaching at UFC, but it didn't get to happen. But yeah, definitely looking forward to maybe next year it'll be a little more from the scouting side with the Orioles. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, they've been really good to me, and seems like a good organization to be with. So kind of weird saying that though, because I've always been a Blue Jays fan, but
Yeah.
I've changed. I guess I got bought
Yeah,
out.
they're playing now. We're missing out.
Yeah.
So I'm only 15 years old, and 5 years ago I barely understood baseball. So please keep that in mind while answering or trying
Gotcha.
to answer this next question.
Sure.
So what does a typical day at work look like for you as a scout on a normal basis?
I mean, like I said, I'm a little more like, I'm for a full-time scout, it might be a little more traveling, right? And yeah, I mean, I know back in the day, definitely scouts, they were basically in a car, and needed to see a guy in person. I know the draft is changing too, right? Like they've shrunk it down. I think next year there's only going to be 20 rounds instead of 50. So it's a little more difficult to get drafted these days. So I mean, it's definitely, as a player, if you get drafted, I do think a lot of kids have to realize, like, it is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. So you should sign. But for me, I mean, I guess even just for Sidearm Nation, just it's a lot of online connecting with coaches. Same thing with the Orioles, connecting with coaches and trying to just really find out who are some of the best players in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and kind of already have a good idea. But I mean, especially from the Orioles standpoint, if they're going to draft someone with a shortened draft, it better be someone that is going to really sign. So that just trying to, really, a lot of it's connecting with coaches and getting a good sense from that standpoint.
Yeah. So do you only scout players from Canada or also from like the U.S.?
Like through Sidearm Nation, I'll be helping them out with U.S. players as well, guys that are playing independent ball and maybe trying to sign as a free agent. So from the amateur side, kind of high school, college, it'll be from in Canada, but from the Sidearm Nation standpoint, it'll be kind of independent professional players looking to sign.
I'm just
Yes.
curious, how many scouts do the Orioles have? I don't know if you have that number on hand or if you're not even allowed to tell us, but how many scouts do you think a typical team would have?
It's a good question. I'm gonna say at least 30 or 40 kind of full time, and then probably another 30 or 40 kind of part time associate, kind of like myself. So yeah, I mean maybe 80 to 100, give or take.
And my next question. Sorry, no, keep going. I'm very bad at this.
And I think that's less than it used to be too, right? And I think that's where the internet's kind of shrunk the scouting community a little bit back. I'm going to say 20 years ago, there might have been double that, right? Just to make sure they had every kind of inch of the, at least North America, but every inch of the world kind of covered. Whereas now that it's kind of the world shrunk a little bit online and stuff, they haven't needed as many scouts, so probably not as many as it used to be.
And so my question is, you're saying that you're doing a lot of scouting for sidearm players. Is that because Sidearm Nation, or is it because you played as a sidearm pitcher?
A little bit of both, right? I mean, that's where I've connected with, obviously, just the community that I've grown through Sidearm Nation and the camps that I've done. I have a pretty good feel for who some of the top sidearm guys are in the country and in college baseball. And so that's where that part will get used with the Orioles. So, yeah. And obviously that's kind of my passion. What's that?
The country being Canada or the U.S.?
Both. We'll go with both. Yeah, we'll go with both. Yeah. From a Canada standpoint, it'll be a lot more like the junior national team guys, especially the high school guys. Like those are the guys that obviously are, the showcase players from a high school standpoint, the guys that are probably going to sign now that it's changed a little bit. There's no longer the draft and follow anymore. So that's where sometimes guys will just kind of maybe get drafted as maybe a fringe prospect, but unfortunately there's no draft and follow anymore. So it really is going to be kind of those junior national team guys and kind of just keeping an eye out on some of those players. So.
Yeah, so before the 2020 season started, how exactly were you affected by the halt in spring training, or was it less of a big deal for you being mostly scouting online? Like, I know they stopped playing, but
yeah, like I said, I was still coaching the University of Calgary then, so we did we were lucky we got our 3 U.S. trips in. We played we went down and played College of Southern Idaho, and we played Skagit Valley in Washington, and our conference was actually just about to start right before everything kind of got shut down. So, I mean, for me personally, I guess maybe good and bad. Like it was probably going to be my last year at UFC regardless. They've been a losing program for kind of the past 18, 19 years. So I was maybe hoping to have maybe the first winning record in UFC history, and then maybe ride into the sunset, I guess. But unfortunately, it didn't get to happen. But I did kind of just maybe mentally see the writing on the wall anyway. Like I said, kind of come January, I did tell myself it was probably just going to be my last year, and really wanted to focus on just some other ventures. So I mean, unfortunately, I didn't get to see how we were going to do this year. We had a pretty good team, and fortunately didn't get to see that happen. But yeah, like I said, just some other stuff. Looking forward to kind of putting my time and energy into Saturday Nation, and I think I was stretching myself pretty thin at times. So.
So, as this season is very different than last season, what would you think would be different about your job? Obviously, it could be slim because I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the draft's already happened. The draft was a little bit smaller this year. There's only 5 rounds this year, so I mean, it was kind of like the guys that are getting drafted this year in those top 5 rounds. They're kind of the guys that almost every team knows about, right? It's kind of the later end rounds, whatever, maybe like round 15 to 20 now moving forward. Whereas before it was kind of that 40th to 50th round. Those are kind of where, some scouts like myself maybe see a guy that maybe not everyone knows about, or maybe, I see something different in a kid that maybe not every scout would see, but hey, like maybe there's just something there. Those are kind of the players that scouts maybe have a very important role. The guys that are maybe fringe, right? Very fringe, but have a lot of potential. Mike Piazza was drafted in the 67th round, and
Yeah.
very guy like that, right, who just got a chance and ran with it, right? But I mean, obviously a guy like Mike Soroka drafted in the first round, every organization knows about Mike Soroka and out of high school, right? But yeah, so I mean, that's where even next year, maybe trying to help find a 19th round draft pick, or a guy that might be able to kind of rise through the organization and get guys out. And that's kind of the exciting part. I mean, hopefully I can help out a young kid's career and try and get him to the bigs. So
Okay, so times are crazy at the moment. We're seeing some things coming back to normal, or a new
Yep.
normal.
yeah.
But one thing that I know is that Off the Bat is here, making content, interviewing great guests, posting news, and we want to stay like this. But that also means that we need to get more guests, which is why I want to know who you would nominate to be on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, that's where even like the fun part for me with doing a podcast, I definitely have lots of connections as well. I mean, that's where I was fortunate enough to play on the junior national team. I don't even I mean, I'm probably very low on that totem pole, but like I played with Russell Martin and Geoff Francis and Justin Morneau.
Wow.
And some of those guys, Jim Henderson, and looking back at it, I'm sure I was fortunate to make it. But I mean, there's lots of guys. I put together a kind of a MLB All-Star team. We went to Holland last year, and some former, Bull Schultz was on that team. Kind of came to Holland, and Josh Colementer was on that team as well. So, I mean, could be a good, like one of those names could be a great guest. Or so definitely if you need help, can definitely try and maybe connect you guys. Or
That would be great.
Bull Schultz could maybe be a good guy, just as a former Blue Jay for yourself too. So.
Martin was a former Blue Jay too.
Yes, Russell. Yes, absolutely. That's true.
All the
Actually,
Canadians end
Jeff
up
Francis
with the
was
Jays.
too. So,
All the
yep.
Canadians end up on the Jays.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, so to the community, you know what to do other than sharing with friends. Check us out, our new website, offthebat.ca. And Geoff, thanks again for being on this episode. Have a great day.